We shall now learn about certain CSS attributes which contribute to the layout of elements on a web page. Let's start with the position attribute. Arguably, the most important CSS attribute which impacts the layout of an element. It is also possibly the most involved. Now, by default, all elements are positioned as static. Let's look at this HTML file. As you can see, we have not specifically defined a position for any of these elements. But there is a possibility that a position might have been defined in the external CSS. So let's take a look at that. Well, as you can see, in the external CSS, in none of the classes or the elements have we mentioned anything related to position. So therefore, all elements in this HTML document are positioned as static, right? Which is the default value. So let's preview this web page and see what it contains. So we have the header, we have the footer, we have the main page content, which consists of 3 divs that are placed next to each other, and then there is some text to the right of the rightmost div. Now the change me div is the one which is highlighted here, and this is what we shall play around with. So let's start by defining a position attribute for the change me div and assign it a value relative, which is one of the 4 possible values for the position attribute. Okay, now let's hit preview, and what we'll find is that there has been no change whatsoever to the layout of the change me div. But why is that? We've just changed the value of the position attribute. Well, by changing the value of the position attribute from the default static to relative, we have not achieved much, right? All we have done is instructed the browser that any adjustments that will be made to this element must be considered in reference to its default or static position, right? So now let's go ahead and make the adjustments. Only then we shall be able to observe an impact. So let's add another attribute top and give it a value of 20 pixels. Okay, let's save this, and once that is done, we shall hit preview. Now, as you can see, what is going to happen is that the div change me has been pushed down by 20 pixels, right? Had we not specified the additional top attribute, then the div would still be in its default position. But now that we have specified a top attribute, the adjustment is made in relation to its default position. Alright, now in addition to top, let us also add a left attribute and adjust it by 30 pixels. So now, based on what we observed with the top attribute, we would expect that this div will now be shifted to the right by 30 pixels, right? So it's already been shifted below or shifted down by 20 pixels, and now since we've added another left attribute with a value of 30 pixels, we shall expect that this div will move to the right by 30 pixels. Now, is that going to happen? Well, that is for you to find out.